Christmas in the afterlife. Merry monarchs all. It was the most wonderful time of the afterlife. Christmas in Westminster's spectral halls. The ghostly monarchs of England had gathered once again for their annual festive celebration. And this year, it promised to be an affair unlike any other. This narrative is sponsored by Polly Speaks For You. The creator of Polly Speaks For You has always been passionate about empowering individuals, especially those with disabilities or learning challenges, through text-to-speech and voice recognition technology. Polly Speaks For You isn't just a tool. It's a bridge for people to communicate and interact with the world in a meaningful way. By blending historical storytelling with cutting-edge tech, the creator showcases how powerful a voice can be, whether telling your own story or preserving history. So hit that like, share, and subscribe button and help this channel grow. Now back to the story. Sir Winston Churchill, still the unofficial head of the Afterlife's Parliament, puffed on his ghostly cigar as he surveyed the grand hall decked out in Christmas finery. Twinkling lights and shimmering tinsel adorned the towering Gothic arches, while a massive Christmas tree stood in the center, its ornaments glowing with an otherworldly light. This, Churchill muttered with a grin, is what Christmas was made for, gathering a bunch of merry monarchs and causing some chaos. The royal spectacle. Around the tree, the translucent figures of England's most famous kings and queens floated, chatting and laughing, their spirits lifted, pun intended, by the festive season. King Henry VIII was at the center of attention, his jolly, oversized form practically glowing with ghostly merriment. He wore a Santa hat perched atop his trademark feathered cap and was loudly boasting about the feast he was planning to materialize later in the evening. Roast pheasant, boar's head, and enough mead to make even a ghost feel tipsy, Henry declared, thumping his belly with a laugh. Who says the afterlife can't be indulgent? Queen Elizabeth I, ever regal even in her spectral state, floated nearby with a bemused expression. Henry, for once, do try not to overdo it. We don't need the ghosts of the afterlife getting indigestion. Oh, Lilibet, Henry shot back with a wink. Christmas is the time for indulgence, not moderation. Behind them, Queen Victoria was inspecting the ornaments on the tree with her usual stern demeanor. We are not amused by this decoration, she remarked, though there was a twinkle in her eye that suggested otherwise. Her ghostly corgis ran excitedly around her feet, yipping in delight as they chased after floating baubles. A festive feud. Not everyone was feeling the Christmas cheer, however. Charles I and Oliver Cromwell were once again at odds, though this time it wasn't about politics. It was about the Christmas pudding. I say the pudding should be traditional, with suet and currants, Charles insisted, crossing his arms. After all, it's the royal way. Cromwell, ever the Puritan even in death, scowled. I'll have no indulgence in these popish luxuries. The pudding should be plain and simple. Winston, floating by with his whiskey, couldn't help but interject. Gentlemen, please. It's Christmas. Can't we put aside old grudges, if only for one night? Charles and Cromwell glared at each other for a moment before. To everyone's surprise, Cromwell cracked a smile. Oh, fine, but I draw the line at wearing a party hat. Carols and ghostly laughter. As the night wore on, the monarchs gathered around the grand piano. Ethereal, of course, and manned by none other than the ghost of George VI, who had taken up playing in his afterlife. He struck up the familiar notes of God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen, and soon the ghostly choir filled the air. Elizabeth I sang with all the grace of her Tudor court, while Henry VIII's booming baritone could be heard above the rest. Victoria joined in with surprising gusto, her once stern expression melting into something resembling joy. Even Charles I and Cromwell, having settled their pudding debate, added their voices to the mix. Now this, Winston said, raising his glass in a toast, is the true spirit of Christmas. Kings and queens, united in song, even if they didn't quite manage it in life. A Merry Christmas toast. As the clock struck midnight, marking the end of Christmas Eve and the beginning of Christmas Day, Churchill called for silence. My dear fellow spirits, he said, his voice echoing through the hall. We've had our share of quarrels in life, and some of us, he glanced at Charles and Cromwell, might even have brought them into the afterlife. But tonight, let's put all that aside. After all, Christmas is the season of peace, goodwill, and, if I may say, rather excellent ghostly company. The monarchs raised their ghostly glasses, toasting to another year in the afterlife, where the worries of the world no longer mattered, and the only thing on their minds was whether Henry's feast would materialize as promised. Merry Christmas to all, Winston declared with a grin, and all a good night. And so, in the hallowed halls of Westminster, the merry monarchs of England enjoyed a Christmas like no other, full of laughter, song, and perhaps just a little too much ghostly pudding. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. To learn more about South Africa's leading accessibility software, visit www.polispeaks4u.co.za and support this meaningful dyslexic initiative. Thank you for watching.